Imagine walking into a courtroom, right? You're expecting this super dry, highly technical debate.
Yeah, like something over software patents or, I don't know, server infrastructure.
Exactly. But instead, you walk in and you witness two of the wealthiest, most powerful men on earth basically putting each other through a brutal psychological dissection.
It is wild. You don't see spreadsheets. You don't see lines of code anywhere.
No, you see character assassination, and it's being deployed as this, like, highly precise legal weapon. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking the unfolding drama and the absolute high-stakes courtroom showdown between Elon Musk and Sam Altman.
Right, and this isn't just an abstract theoretical debate anymore, you know. We're pulling from the latest reporting out of MIT Technology Review.
Which has been fantastic, by the way.
Oh, absolutely. They've been rigorously tracking the third and final week of this trial. And what they're documenting is, well, it's a complete departure from what anyone expects when two tech giants collide in court.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I really want to bypass the daily legal summaries. I want to get into the actual machinery of what is happening in that room right now.
Yeah, the real mechanics of it.
Exactly. Because we're watching a legal landscape that has morphed from this dispute over foundational agreements into a bare-knuckle battle over credibility, control, and character.
It's honestly less like a standard corporate lawsuit and way more like a messy, hostile political campaign.
Or like a really high-stakes divorce where the gloves have just completely come off.
That is a great way to put it.
Yeah.
They aren't just trying to prove a contract breach anymore. They're actively trying to destroy the other's approval rating, basically, with the jury.
Right, to secure ultimate veto power over an entire technology.
Yeah, and that's the exact shift we're seeing.
Yeah.
The thematic focus of this final week has pivoted squarely away from, like, technological timelines.
And directly onto the concept of fundamental credibility.
Precisely. The core of this legal battle has really boiled down to lawyers openly sparring over the integrity and the internal motivations of both Musk and Altman.
But wait, hold on. Why? I mean, from the outside, abandoning the technical arguments feels incredibly risky to me.
Yeah, it does seem that way, yeah.
Like, if Musk's legal team spends all their time attacking Altman's character, don't they risk looking, I don't know, desperate to the jury?
It's a huge risk.
So why does a trial about cutting-edge, future-defining tech ultimately devolve into an old-fashioned character assassination, like evaluating whether someone is a good person or a bad person?
Well, what's fascinating here is the underlying legal mechanism that actually makes this necessary.
Okay.
It looks like mudslinging, sure,
Yeah.
but it is a highly calculated doctrine. You have to look at the structure of what is actually being contested here.
Right.
They are fighting over an ambiguous foundational agreement, which is essentially a mandate to develop artificial intelligence for the benefit of humanity.
Right, because this whole thing started with a nonprofit ethos.
Exactly. And when you're dealing with a nonprofit or even a capped profit hybrid structure like we see here, the fiduciary duty, the legal obligation of the leadership, isn't just to maximize shareholder value.
Like a normal company.
Right, in a normal company, you just have to prove they lost money or made bad business deals. But here, the duty is to the mission itself.
Wow, okay.
But how do you legally prove that a CEO breached their duty to, quote-unquote, humanity?
Yeah, how do you do that? It's an incredibly nebulous concept.
It is. You can't just point to a lost quarterly earning report and say, look, humanity lost.
So what's the play?
The only legal pathway to prove a breach of that specific, unique fiduciary duty is to prove that the individual's internal motivations were entirely selfish or deceitful at the time those decisions were made.
Oh, wow. Okay, I get it now. So if you can prove the person across the aisle is fundamentally untrustworthy in their day-to-day operations,
Yes.
then you legally undermine their claim to be stewarding this technology for the greater good.
Precisely. Intent matters. Character matters legally here.
So it's not petty, it's the actual burden of proof.
That's the crazy part. What we're witnessing is how 19th century concepts of contract law and fiduciary duty are being stretched to govern 21st century artificial intelligence.
That is wild.
And because the laws haven't caught up to the tech, human flaws are taking center stage in a battle over artificial intelligence.
That reframes everything for me. Let's dive into how that strategy is actually being executed then, starting with the intense scrutiny on Altman.
Right, the third week focus.
Yeah, so MIT Tech Review detailed that Musk's team is relentlessly focusing on a history of deceit and self-serving behavior tied to companies affiliated with the AI lab.
Yes, they are hitting that hard.
But what does that actually look like in practice? We aren't just talking about a CEO lying about a product release date, are we?
No, no, no. The legal strategy goes much deeper into the actual corporate architecture. The allegations really center on how Altman operates within a massive web of affiliated entities.
Which is pretty common in the tech world, right? Founders often have their hands in multiple venture capital funds, startups, hardware companies simultaneously.
Oh, totally common. But the argument Musk's team is constructing is that Altman uses this complex corporate architecture to hide his true motives.
Okay.
They're saying he's engaging in self-dealing,
Yeah.
which is, a legal term for when a fiduciary acts in their own best interest rather than the interest of the organization they're supposed to serve.
Here's where it gets really interesting because, well, Silicon Valley runs on this myth, right? The myth of the altruistic tech founder.
Oh, big time. The whole changing the world narrative.
Exactly. The visionary genius who is above the petty squabbles of traditional business, who just wants to build a better future for everyone.
Right.
But if the lawyers can walk the jury through the actual mechanics, showing how IP or resources might have been cross-pollinated between entities for personal leverage, it completely shatters that myth.
It shatters the myth entirely. And more importantly, legally, it establishes a pattern.
A pattern of behavior.
Yes. Musk's team isn't just pointing out an isolated disagreement over server costs or something. By dissecting his behavior across various affiliated entities, they're attempting to prove to the jury that Altman is this manipulative operator.
Manipulative operator. That is a heavy label.
Highly strategic, though. They're trying to pierce the corporate veil and show that his actions are consistently driven by a desire to consolidate personal power. He's just clothing it in the language of altruism.
Wow. Okay, but if Musk's team is spending the entire trial digging through Altman's past corporate dealings, Altman's legal team can't just sit there on defense, right?
Not at all.
MIT Tech Review notes they launched a fierce counteroffensive, so how are they punching back?
By completely flipping the temporal focus of the trial.
What do you mean by temporal focus?
Well, think about it. Musk's team is looking backward. They're digging through old emails, old investments, trying to build this historical pattern of deceit.
Right, combing through the past.
But Altman's defense is entirely focused on looking forward. They went on the attack by portraying Musk as a power-hungry figure.
Ah, okay.
They're arguing his real determination is to dominate the future development of artificial intelligence purely for his own competitive ends.
Wait. If Altman's team is attacking Musk's hypothetical future intentions, rather than concrete facts from the past, how does that work as a defense?
It's a classic maneuver, actually.
Is this basically a legal strategy of saying, hey, don't look at my past corporate structuring, look at his dangerous endgame?
Yes, essentially. It relies on a legal concept similar to the doctrine of unclean hands.
Unclean hands. Okay, explain that.
If a plaintiff, in this case, Musk is bringing a lawsuit claiming they are trying to protect the foundational mission of safe AI, the defense is allowed to present evidence that the plaintiff's actual motives are entirely different.
So they're saying he's a hypocrite?
Basically. Altman's team is arguing that Musk isn't suing to protect humanity. He's suing because he lost control of the most important technological race of the century, and he just wants to monopolize it.
Which is a massive antitrust shadow argument, right?
Absolutely.
They're trying to paint Musk not as a concerned founder, but as a thwarted competitor trying to use the court system to hobble his biggest rival.
Exactly. And, we should state clearly right here, as we analyze these mechanics, we are strictly impartial guides to this material.
Yes, 100%.
We are not taking sides or validating either of these claims. We are just looking at the facts reported.
Right. Our goal is just to dissect how these two sharply contrasting narratives, the manipulative operator versus the overreaching magnate, are being constructed for the jury.
Exactly. It's fascinating from a purely strategic standpoint.
Absolutely. Because what is truly fascinating to me is the psychological architecture of these two arguments.
Yeah.
You have Musk's team analyzing the past to prove a breach of duty, and Altman's team projecting into the future to prove malicious intent.
It's a collision of two completely different types of evidence.
Which brings us to the most unpredictable variable in this entire equation, the jury.
Oh boy, the jury.
I mean, how does a jury of regular people even begin to weigh a history of deceit against a desire to dominate?
It's incredibly difficult.
You can't put a desire to dominate on a scale. You can't put a complex web of venture capital investments under a microscope and say, yes, there is the deceit. These are massive subjective character judgments.
They really are. And this raises a huge question about our current legal framework. The jury instructions for a case like this are going to be a complete nightmare.
I can't even imagine.
The jury has to evaluate the preponderance of the evidence. But when the evidence is largely based on interpreting intents from internal emails, text messages, and really complex board maneuvers.
It's basically psychological profiling.
It really is. It essentially requires them to perform psychological profiling. They aren't just deciding if a contract was signed. They're deciding whose internal monologue was more toxic at the time.
That is wild. But the stakes are so much higher than just who wins a cash settlement, right?
Oh, infinitely higher.
Because MIT Tech Review explicitly notes the outcome will have significant implications for the future dynamics of AI leadership.
And that is exactly because of how legal precedent works.
Right.
The jury isn't just picking a winner in a vacuum. They are legally validating one of these two dominant narratives as historical fact.
Okay, explain the mechanism there. How does 12 people deciding they don't like someone's text messages set a precedent for the entire AI industry?
Because whatever this jury decides will become the new legal standard for how fiduciary duty is interpreted in the AI space.
Ah, okay.
If they side with Musk, the legal record reflects that utilizing complex, affiliated corporate structures to maneuver AI assets is fundamentally a breach of duty.
I see.
It validates the idea that founders can be held legally liable if they deviate from their original altruistic mission statements.
So it essentially gives early investors or co-founders a massive legal weapon. They can sue current CEOs if they don't like the direction the company is taking.
Exactly. It would chill a lot of standard Silicon Valley maneuvering.
Right. And on the flip side,
Conversely, if they side with Altman, the legal record reflects that utilizing lawsuits to attempt to force open source development or hinder a competitor is an unacceptable monopolistic tactic.
so that provides legal cover for AI companies.
Yes, it allows them to protect their intellectual property and govern themselves as standard competitive tech entities without the constant threat of these mission breach lawsuits.
Okay, so what does this all mean?
The million-dollar question.
Literally, for everyone listening who isn't a Silicon Valley billionaire or corporate lawyer, why does the governance structure of these companies actually matter to the tools we use every day?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes the entire ecosystem of innovation.
How so?
Startups, venture capitalists, and future founders are all watching this verdict right now to see what kind of leadership behavior is legally rewarded and what is punished.
Right.
For the last decade, the AI industry has operated in this very founder-friendly era. Visionary leaders were given massive leeway to structure companies however they wanted.
The classic move fast and break things era.
Precisely. But this trial signals the end of that era.
Wow. You think so?
I really do.
Mm.
If every text message, every board maneuver, and every affiliated investment can be weaponized in court to prove a breach of character,
Yeah, that changes the math.
venture capitalists are going to demand radically different board structures. We will see a massive shift toward rigorous, traditional corporate oversight.
So the Wild West is over.
Basically, the days of handshake agreements over the benefit of humanity are definitely over.
It forces radical transparency, but maybe also radical caution, right?
Absolutely. Caution
Yeah.
will be the new watchword.
And that caution trickles down to the actual technology you and I use. Because the software and the AI tools you interact with every day, the algorithms sorting your data, the systems drafting code, the models making decisions in healthcare,
Yeah, all of it.
those tools are shaped by the governance models at the very top. So if a company is suddenly terrified of a lawsuit claiming they breached their duty to humanity, does that slow down their development?
It almost certainly has to.
Do they stop releasing open source models out of fear of liability?
Or do they entirely abandon the nonprofit hybrid models altogether and just admit they are building standard for-profit software?
Just drop the charade.
Right. The verdict will dictate the structural blueprints for the next generation of tech companies. Will the future of AI be decentralized and open or locked down in highly defensive, legally impenetrable corporate fortresses?
It is just wild to think that the trajectory of the most transformative technology of our lifetime is currently hanging on the subjective character assessment of 12 jurors in a courtroom.
It really highlights how fragile these structures are.
We are literally watching the rules of engagement being written in real time.
It is a profound moment of transition. We're moving away from the philosophical debates about AI, the fun stuff, and entering an era defined by fierce, incredibly tactical governance battles.
Okay, looking back at the complete picture we've drawn today, Week 3 has brought this trial to a dramatic climax.
It certainly has.
We've seen the complex technological debates completely sidelined in favor of this intense psychological dissection of credibility.
Yeah, character is on trial.
Musk's team is trying to legally prove Altman is a manipulative operator by dissecting his corporate maneuvers, while Altman's team is deploying the doctrine of unclean hands to paint Musk as a power-hungry magnate intent on monopolization.
It's narrative versus narrative.
And the altruistic founder myth isn't just cracking it, is being systematically dismantled under oath. And the precedent set by this jury will fundamentally re-engineer how future AI companies are governed, funded, and controlled.
The tech world is holding its breath right now.
Yeah.
Because this isn't just about two men anymore.
No, not at all.
It's about establishing the legal guardrails for the entire intelligence era.
But before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on the sheer messy humanity of this entire spectacle we've talked about today.
Oh, this is a good one.
Think about the ultimate goal of artificial intelligence. The promise that is constantly sold to us is that AI will be an objective, rational, calculating tool.
Right, free from all our baggage.
Exactly. It's supposed to be free from human error, emotional bias, and petty grievances.
The ultimate, perfectly logical system.
Right. But if the very individuals pioneering this supposedly objective technology are currently locked in a bitter legal battle defined entirely by incredibly flawed human dynamics,
Yeah, the mudslinging.
accusations of deceit, manipulation, jealousy, and a hunger for absolute power, how much of that inevitably bleeds into the code?
That is the terrifying question.
Can you really build an unbiased, perfectly rational machine when the fight for its control is driven by the most irrational, emotionally charged human instincts?
It really makes you wonder.
It makes you wonder what kind of intelligence we are actually teaching these systems to mimic. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
As this story continues to unfold, keep questioning the mechanics behind the headlines and keep exploring the very human elements driving our technological future.